Welcome back to the Healing Chamber. This is Layla. Today we're talking about sacred boundaries and how to find strength in discipline. And because we're Saturday today, every Saturday I'm going to be sharing some Saturnian wisdom because we're going to be honoring Saturn today. So each day is going to be honoring the energy of the planet of that specific day. So today, when it comes to sacred boundaries, I usually talk about the shadow aspect of Saturn and how it can be very limiting and it feels very restrictive when we're going against the energy of Saturn. But once we actually learn to harness the power of Saturn, we understand that having boundaries that are sacred to us, whether it's in our personal life, in business, as a sugar baby, everywhere actually, when you have high boundaries and high standards, you're going to notice that your life starts to shift in a very positive way. But usually what happens is that when a woman grows up with a father figure who is not masculine, or maybe he wasn't present, so either way there's no masculine container in her life, in her childhood, setting boundaries is going to feel very weird to her. It's going to feel very it's going to feel uncomfortable, basically. So if a woman had a masculine figure, this is something she's going to naturally do because this is a very it's an assertive type of frequency where it's like you don't want to deal with people who cannot match your boundaries and your standards. So the main lesson when it comes to Saturn, because usually what happens is that when people start to shift and they expand their consciousness and they start to rise their standards, their boundaries, their prices, because they understand that everything is an energetic exchange. So if we want to feel valued and appreciated and expanded, we have to only deal with people who see our value and see our essence or energy as something that's luxurious and valuable. The issue is that a lot of women start to rise their standards, and what happens is that they usually start to manifest subconsciously people who are trying to bring down those standards, because what happens is basically just her, from her womb, from her subconscious trauma, she's manifesting the exact opposite of what she wants at first. All right. Depending on the level of trauma, this can manifest like within a few days, or a few weeks, or a few months. It doesn't really matter. As long as she persists with her high standards, she's always going to get what she wants. A lot of people usually start to back down or they stop taking action because they're seeing so many people trying to stop them. And this is something that's very common, especially if you have a spiritual business or you're sharing your spiritual gifts. This is actually the witch wound, where a lot of women try to give so much for free, or they just lower their prices, like they just sell their spiritual gifts for like a few pennies, right? Because they want to be able to serve a lot of people, but it's a people-pleasing tendency. Or they might start to experience, like if they're raising their prices, they might start to experience like people reaching out and messaging them and be like, hey, I wish I could afford you. I wish I could afford your spiritual gifts, but I can't right now. Can you do something for me? Can you do a discount? This situation is the equivalent of a man trying to lower your standards and trying to sleep with you with nothing in exchange. Like energetically, he just wants to harvest your energy. He wants you to be submissive to nothing. He wants you to be submissive to poverty. He wants you to be submissive to his audacity. So that's the same thing. Like when you have people crawling and be like, hey, those are not your people. Those people are not your customers. This is obviously not your husband. Your husband would never disrespect you like this. And so this is a reminder that when we're implementing sacred boundaries, this can happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen to everybody. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen with the same time frame. For some women, it's going to happen for like 2 weeks, and then boom, they're going to start meeting and connecting with their with the people who truly value and love their energy. So this is why I do a lot of comparison between, having a sugar daddy and a business and dealing with men, because this is all masculine energy. And we live in a society where it's almost impossible as a woman to not deal with men. Like you can, if like you really want to and you want to live in the forest by yourself. But in general, like for most women, it's nearly impossible not to deal with men. So it's better to understand and heal and move forward with these new lessons and new rules and sacred boundaries. When a woman starts to keep promises to herself and to be consistent and disciplined, that doesn't mean she's working hard, but if she's discipline, like she's serious about taking care of herself, she's serious about her spiritual journey, she's serious about moving in silence, she's serious about keeping her sexual energy to create art, to create social media content, to create her business, to create her own garden, this is when she starts to rise as a phoenix. She starts to finding her own strength, and she's able to attract men who match that energy. So honoring our boundaries is something that is sometimes not always easy because especially if we have a background where, we had to like struggle a little bit, and then you have people coming up to you and they're like, hey, I really want to buy your services, products, stuff, but I cannot afford it. It is imperative to keep your boundaries and your standards, but at the same time, if you're in a position in life where you're not, obviously you're well off, you're successful, you can create something to help those people in a separate category, because you don't want this energy to affect your business. You don't want, like, for example, if you have a man coming up to you that's trying to like lower your standards and he's like, hey, let's just hook up, let's have a situationship. Obviously, they don't say that, but they're trying to get into that type of situation with you. And you're like, in your head, you're like, I want my husband. Like, I don't want anything less than that. I don't want anything less than luxury and a husband. So get the fuck away from me. So for some women, it's going to be easier. For others, it might trigger this like loneliness wound, this abandonment wound. So it's really important to stay really grounded when we're doing this type of work, to really dive deep within and to actually remove the focus out of the external circumstances, because the external circumstances are only reflecting subconscious wounds. So if what we're seeing is not pleasurable and we do not like what is presented to us, because you're a goddess, you can say in your mind, I don't like that, give me something better. And that's it. You're not gonna lower your standard for a man just because you feel bad for him. Like, that's pick me energy. Like, why would you do this to yourself? Why would you give your energy for free? And the same thing applies to your business. Now, if you have people coming up to you and they're like, hey, I really like your services, you can direct them to something that could be within their budget. You don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to like be arrogant. you can be like, hey, I get it. You can even say the truth. Like, I used to be in your position before. I was not able to afford that, but this is what I did instead, Or sometimes some people just don't like unsolicited advice. So you can just be stern and assertive and be like, hey, I'm sorry that, this is, the price is too high for you, but this is what it's worth. All right, this is what it's worth. But I'm pretty sure there are companies offering this something similar to a lower price, whatever they're doing, whatever their business model is. But that could be an answer, And that's it. You're not charity. Like, if you want to do charity, you can either give money to some trustworthy charities, or you can start your own if you want to make, like I did, to make sure that your money is really going towards the people. But those two things are separate in my mind. My charity is for charity, and my business is to be like monetized. If a business is not monetized, it's gonna shut its doors. It's gonna close down. It's not gonna be operating anymore. And if you're not operating anymore, you cannot serve people. You cannot not help people. You can't do anything. So this is how important boundaries are. All right. Yeah, let me know if you have any comments. Maybe it resonates with you. Let me know as well, and I'll see you tomorrow.